Welcome to the weekend warm-up, and what a few days we have in store. Of course, Aintree taking centre stage with the Grand National on Saturday at 5:15. Chris Dixon joins me, and it is the race that grips the nation.
Certainly is, Emma, and very much looking forward to it. Back into jumps mode for just a few days for Aintree, of course, and particularly the Grand National 5:15 on Saturday afternoon. And a strange Grand National, as we've said on a few occasions recently, around Cheltenham in particular. No crowds there. It really changes the feel of the race to some degree. But once the horses are out on the track, nothing really any different. And very much looking forward to that big field cavalry charge towards the first. They don't have too long before they get to that first. And I think it's as much as anything, just if whatever you've backed, connections of those horses, riders of those horses involved, will just want to get into a nice position in the early part of the race, get their horse into a rhythm, get them jumping, and from there start to ride the race.
And what do you make of the race this year? We've got a relatively short price favourite in the shape of Cloth Cap, and he warrants his place at the top of the market. He's well in. Trevor Hemmings has got a fantastic record as an owner. I mean, everything is sort of there. And it's hard to pick faults in him. But this is a Grand National, and he's pretty short, isn't he?
He is pretty short, but then, you know, he is a stone well in on the official handicap. Now, whether that tells the full story or not, I'm not quite sure, but I don't think it's a million miles wide of the mark, and he's done nothing but progress during the course of this term. You go back to his win in the Ladbrokes Trophy at Newbury. It was very impressive that day in the first time cheap pieces, proving himself in that big field scenario, jumping enthusiastically, making all of the running, and then he was impressive at Kelso. The handicapper hasn't been able to have another look at him since then, hence he is a stone well in. The cheap pieces have obviously done a little bit for him. He looks like a horse that's going to stay absolutely fine, and he does have that right style of racing for this race. I think for all this is a race where you need to stay really well. You do need a bit of pace as well. It's not that often you see them coming from right out the back of the field, is it? So I think Cloth Cap has got a lot in his favour. He's an efficient jumper of a normal regulation fence. Whether he will be over the national fences, well, that is sort of anyone's guess. But having placed in a Scottish national, we know that stamina isn't a problem. He ticks an awful lot of boxes. It's just that price one, isn't it? And I think you'll find a lot of people doing previews, tipping on the national. They'll kind of think, yes, he's got an obvious chance, but do I really want to side with the first one favourite for the national?
And naturally, you find yourself wanting to find something else, don't you, at a more appealing price, just because it's the Grand National?
Yeah, of course you do. But there's absolutely no doubt that he is the horse that they've all got to beat, and he deserves his position at the top of the market. Is he too short? Not necessarily, to be honest, because there'll be plenty of dead wood in the race, but I'm still not going to go with him.
So what are you going to go with? Because JP McManus has got a really strong hand at the top of the market. Any Second Now, Manila Times, Kimberlite Candy, you know, they're all big contenders for JP.
They are. I sort of narrowed down my shortlist eventually to two McManus horses. Kimberlite Candy was one for Tom Lacey's team. He's got that ability to handle these fences. He's twice hit the frame in a Beecher chase. So he's a horse that has jumped around here in the past and taken to it really well. He is often ridden not too far back, but not right up with the pace. So again, I think that is ideal, just in behind the leaders, a front end of mid-division kind of spot for him. And he's off the same mark as when finishing second in the Beecher back in December. He's not really had many goes over this sort of trip. In fact, this far, he's not had a go, but he ran pretty well in an Ida, and when he won the Classic Chase, he looked a very strong stay. So he was high up the list, but ultimately, I went for Any Second Now for Ted Walsh and Mark Walsh, the man in the saddle. This is a horse who is completely unexposed over a trip, and he's been running over 2 miles on his most recent outing when he won at Navan. But that is an approach that in the past Ted Walsh has taken with national horses. He's dropped them in trip for part of the season to make sure that they've got the pace to hold that position in a race. And I think if you go back to his Cheltenham win a couple of seasons back, that shows that he does have plenty of stamina. It doesn't prove him over this far, but it does show that he has plenty of stamina. I think he could be a well-handicapped horse. He was campaigned last year with this race in mind, and he has been again.
Okay, well, you've actually summarised my tip very well indeed, because I'm sort of fairly similar to you. I like Kimberlite Candy, as you say, a horse that's very much proven over the fences, having finished second in 2 runnings of the Beecher. So yeah, thanks for that, Chris. Perfectly done. What about one or two of the others? Willie Mullins's Borough Saint. He's been kind of mixing it up over hurdles. Do you see him as a big contender? He's been sort of the subject of plenty of support over the last few weeks.
Yeah, he looks like a horse that has sort of been campaigned with the race in mind again, doesn't he? As you said, he's had a bit of time over hurdles. Interesting thing with him is he is an Irish national winner back in 2019. You would think that he's going to steer pretty well. Last few runs have been on a very deep surface, and yet his best form is largely away from really testing ground. So that might help him. And I certainly would have him on what is likely to be a fairly long shortlist. The horse that catches my eye a little bit, Farclar as well. He probably won't stay. But Farclar is a horse that was second to the shunter at Cheltenham when he was last seen. He's off the same mark, and he could just be attractively handicapped if he does get home. And so I'd have half an eye on him, but you could have half an eye on a bundle of them. I'll go with any second now.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'm with Kimber Like Candy. We're now going to have a look at the rest of the card. We'll go back to the beginning, and we'll start off with the Grade 3 handicap hurdle. 2 horses that ran really well at Cheltenham, and I guess are the form horses in the Pertemps. So Come On Teddy, who was 3rd, in Champagne Platinum, who was 5th. I'm actually going to go with Come On Teddy here. Very consistent horse, travels strongly, and looks a likely candidate to surely run well.
Yeah, there was a sort of feeling, wasn't there, at Cheltenham that the race didn't fully get to the bottom of him. He hit the line very strongly, and you kind of felt that if he'd have just got going that little bit sooner, he might well have gone reasonably close to winning, for all that he was beaten 5.5 lengths at the line by Mrs. Milner. So I definitely agree that those 2 horses are sort of the form picks coming into this. Champagne Platinum, a really strong travelling type. He massively caught the eye at Haydock when getting qualified for the Pertemps final. I thought he ran pretty well in that race, as you said there, with the cheek pieces back on. And they're left off today. I don't think that's going to be too much of a problem. So they're both interested. I'm just going to throw one into the mix at a bigger price, a horse called Kid Commando here. Now, there's a reasonable chance that he doesn't stay, and I wouldn't normally like a horse that's quite enthusiastic in his races, taking a massive jump up in trip. But he's had only 1 start since he had wind surgery. It might just be that he's a horse that's going to see out races more strongly, having had wind surgery. And there is quite a bit of stamina in his pedigree. So I wanted to find something at a decent price in this, and I thought Kid Commando had some handicapping scope still off the mark that he's on. Stamina is the unknown, but you're getting rewarded by a fairly big price as a result of that unknown quantity.
Okay, what about the BETWAY MERSEY Novices Hurdle? We're likely to see Mydrogo go off favourite here. He's 3 from 3 other hurdles, and you'd have to say he was pretty impressive at Kelso, wasn't he?
He was, and the time of that race was really quick, Emma. But he's been very impressive this season. And the thing that I've liked about him, he hasn't been absolutely mustard from day one. He's steadily got better. There's been improvement each time. And I don't think that we've seen how good he is yet, but we do know that he's very good. And the time, as I say, at Kelso was very quick. Dan Skelton's horses are running well. I think there's an awful lot to like. And I think that going up an extra couple of furlongs in trip is likely to suit him. There's plenty of stamina through that pedigree. And he's damstered this far and a little bit further. I thought Ballyadam was maybe the biggest danger, obviously second to Appreciate It in the Supreme at Cheltenham. He's going up in trip, but I think there's a reasonable chance that he stays, for all that he's a strong traveller. But Mydrogo for me.
Okay, yeah, Brave Man's Game is quite interesting. He's 3rd in the Ballymore as well. May Appreciate, I thought, the easier track here. But all in all, I think we both agree that Mydrogo is the improving horse. The Dunbar Novices Chase, it's all about Shiskin, isn't it? He's about 4 to 1 on, and he's just got to jump round, surely.
You would think so. I mean, this is sort of a race to watch and savour, I suppose, and just see a top-class horse in full flight, hopefully. Very impressive again at Cheltenham in winning the Arkle. Again, in a good time, in what has been a strong year for novice chasers. He still looks the pick of them to me, and I just think he's an outstanding horse that will outclass what are some very good opponents, but he's going to be too good for them.
Okay, so if you were thinking of maybe a forecast option here, there aren't many runners, but All Mankind or Tamarok de Marathon, where would you be siding with those? What do you think is the biggest danger to him?
I think the biggest danger probably something that doesn't try and get the better of him.
Yeah.
And doesn't try and take him on too soon, which could be a horse like Longhouse Sully, who Longhouse Sale, sorry, who doesn't tend to get involved in the earlier part of a race. His jumping looks a bit of an asset as a rule. He was disappointing at Sandown when he was last seen, and indeed his last 2 starts. But if you go back to his summer form, he would have a bit of a chance. Now that form isn't that strong, so I wouldn't be right behind him, but he might just be able to pick up the pieces, perhaps.
Okay, we'll move on to the Stayers Hurdle, and finally we do have the rematch between Paisley Park and Time Hill, because obviously Time Hill didn't make the festival. Are you thinking this is between the two, or is it more open than that, and which way are you leaning?
I'm leaning towards Time Hill on account of the track. I think this is a track that'll suit him better than it suits Paisley Park. We shouldn't forget Roxana in discussing these two either, because if you go back to Ascot, when Paisley Park just collared Time Hill back in December in the long walk, Roxana wasn't too far behind in 3rd, and she's gone to the Cheltenham Festival and run well in a race that didn't really pan out that well for her, dropping back in trips. So she'll have a chance as well. But then you watch that race back, and there's not an obvious reason as to why you would think she will reverse that form. She's been 2nd in this race previously, just touched off by If the Cap Fits when it was last run in 2019. He's in the field again. But ultimately, I think it boils down to Paisley Park and Time Hill. It's one apiece between them so far this season. Time Hill coming out on top at Newbury. Paisley Park just getting the better of him at Ascot. But I think this track suits Time Hill a little bit better. He's got a little bit more speed than Paisley Park, I reckon. Paisley Park takes a bit of winding up, finds an awful lot off the bridle. He will want the race to develop a good way from home. But I think Time Hill, under Tom O'Brien, a jockey change, obviously Richard Johnson now retired, might just have a little bit too much. Obviously, you've got in your mind that he had that little setback that made him miss Cheltenham, but it clearly wasn't anything too serious, just bad timing as much as anything else. And I'd be with Time Hill.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I actually put Roxana up as an each way selection at sort of 5-1. I can see her being there or thereabouts. As you said, 2nd in this in 2019 was actually 2nd in the novice hurdle here in 2018. Ran well last time, the triple suit, and she's tough. I can see her being bang there. Then in the 4:15, it's the Grade 3 handicap chase. Quite an open looking race. What's your thoughts on take on this?
Well, Happy Go Lucky is still a possible improver, I think, Emma. He was a very strong favourite at the Cheltenham Festival, wasn't he? He finished 2nd there behind Vintage Clouds, a well-handicapped horse in the Ultima. He'd won at Cheltenham before that, and he proved himself in that bigger field, tougher scenario over fences. He'd obviously run well at the previous year's Cheltenham Festival. His season was very much geared around Cheltenham, but that doesn't mean to say that he won't go on from it. So I think he's sort of your start point for the race, but the one that I'm going to go for is a horse called Sam Brown for Anthony Honeyball. His horse is in pretty good form at the moment. They stuck a tongue tie on this fella for the first time. Now, he hasn't been seen since November, but he's a horse that has often had big gaps between his runs. He doesn't take too much racing. He's obviously a little bit fragile. 9-year-old who's not made the track too often, but he does have a good strike rate. And he is a horse, I think, that has got plenty of ability. And from the handicap mark that he's on, if they've got him in A1 condition, then I can see him going pretty well. Now, he might want the ground more testing than it is. That would be a slight worry, but I just thought at a fair enough price. He's got a strong travelling, forward-going style of racing, again, often suited to this track. His jumping is usually pretty good, and I thought Sam Brown was just worth an interest at the probably slightly bigger prices. Okay,
I sort of half fancy Top Notch here, having finished a good 3rd at Cheltenham last time behind the shunter. That was over 2.5. He's won here before. He's obviously stepping up in distance, and he's got the benefit of a £7 claimer. Then we wrap up the day at 6:20. It's a long old day, isn't it? And there's always that lull after the Grand National, but the bump is always an intriguing race. And there are a few here that could just potentially be quite good.
There are,
as you'd expect.
Balco Coastal is probably chief among them. He was a winner in quite a quick time. Now, it was on the all-weather at Kempton, so it's a very different surface, but be hard-pressed to think this fella was going to be an all-weather horse, and that the surface was something that really suited him particularly well. So I think you just judge it on what it was. There was it was a jumpers bumper card that he won on. The first few races were 2 mile, and then they were 2.25 mile. Of the 2 mile races, he was probably, I think it was nearly 7 seconds quicker than the rest of than the other horses in those races, and he won by a wide margin, absolutely tanking through the race. So he could be very good. He'd be the way that I'd go. Dante also looked a really nice prospect when winning on debut for Ollie Murphy at Wincanton. He really powered through that race very strongly, and that was a taking display from him. While Napper's Hill has a little bit of depth to his form, being 2 from 2, and he beat a load of winners to take a listed race last time out. So he's got that little bit more experience and know-how on his side. But I thought Balco Coastal looked a really good prospect.
Yeah, talking of the Paul Nicholls horse, yeah, he actually beat his more fancy stablemate, didn't he, at Ascot last time? And as you said, it is bringing some quite strong form into it. I actually like Go Dante. He was well fancied. He went off even money for his debut at Wincanton, and to me couldn't have been more impressive. Ollie Murphy particularly good with these types of horses, and all in all it looks an intriguing race to wrap up the card at Aintree. So yeah, what's not to like? It's a really exciting weekend.
Certainly is. Really looking forward to it. Hopefully manage to back the national winner. Plenty of people have different views and backing different things, probably backing more than one horse in the race. It's that kind of race, isn't it? I think if I had to only back one horse during the course of this Aintree card on Saturday, it would be My Drogo in that novices hurdle. I think he's looked a really nice prospect so far, and there's more to come.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Chris, and we'll chat to you next week.
Thanks, Emma.